Okay, so now we're going to get to essentially our next session, and it's an honor and a pleasure to actually now start discussing the innovation ecosystems here in Greece, in Europe, and potentially also the world. We will have here, and we'll do this panel in English because we have some esteemed guests also. So we have here three of our guests, and online we'll have Dr. Jode Boeck. And I would like first to thank you all for your presence and giving us your time today for us to discuss this very interesting topic. So I will do a very quick kind of round of intro on who we have here, and I'll give you then the floor, posing a few questions. So starting from my right, we have George Kotrotsios, and actually George is a very well-known figure in the industry and is coming from the #1 innovative country in the world. So I definitely want us to hear, what is it that we need to be doing? What are the lessons and the things that we would want to know? On the screen, I think we will have in a moment Dr. Jode Boeck. Yes, from IMEC. A pleasure and an honor to have you here, Dr. De Boeck. And then on my right, I have Mr. Patrick Bressler from Fraunhofer, who's actually been working in this innovation area, and it's, I would say, a pleasure to have him tell us how this essentially worked in Germany at start and in Europe in the following aspects. And then finally, Professor Ioannis Emiris, President and Director General of Athena Research and Innovation Center, a well-known center in Greece that essentially supports innovation research in Greece. So I think now that I've actually done the introductions, I will want to start essentially by, starting from the, first of all, with Dr. Jode Boeck, and talk about, in essence, what is your organization essentially been doing and how it actually positions itself in the local and in the European innovation ecosystem. So that would be my first question to you, Mr. Dr. De Boeck.
Thank you very much. And first and foremost, thanks for the privilege of allowing me to join. Also, my apologies for not being there. I trust you believe I'd rather be in Athens today than in the grey Leuven in Belgium. But the essence of your question, I think, reflects to choices a country makes, and in terms of moving its innovation forward. And so 40 years ago, so we are celebrating our 40th anniversary, the regional government of Flanders in the federal state of Belgium decided to put a number of strategic research centers in place that would be centrally positioned between the universities and make sure that the investment in the capacity for doing research is centralized, which has been or has proven to be a good choice for a capital-intensive research sector like semiconductors. And so making a jump to today, together with our siblings in Flanders on biotechnology, on industrial policy, and on energy, we are positioning ourselves with a clear focus on semiconductor and digital innovation. And so I would say that focus, also the perseverance from the government to over 4 decades consistently support the upward trend of moving digital innovation into many sectors has been important to us. The second, and that's to answer your question on the more global or European ecosystem, being in a relatively not so big country as Belgium, we of course needed to focus also externally quite quickly. And so that international orientation has helped us to build very strong ties with the global industry, which is typically the case for basically any industry, but specifically also for the value chain in semiconductor. And the essence of innovation, of course, is to bring such ecosystem together in the very early stages of R&D. And I think that's where our positioning in Europe is, that we can attract, but also we can collaborate with European players, but also industry that is by virtue multinational. And so in that sense, that international partnership is another success factor, I would believe, of where we are today as IMEC.
Thank you very much. I would want to go to Mr. Bressler and ask, how Fraunhofer essentially addressed this area.
Thank you very much. And also thank you for inviting me and I can be here. I guess I'll try to be brief, but give an introduction to Fraunhofer, the Fraunhofer Gesellschaft. It's 73 years old, or 74. It was founded in 1949, and I like to stress it was founded with Marshall funds from the US government. And the Max Planck Society people know that Fraunhofer is actually a twin. From the administration and from the structure, it's identical to Max Planck. You have individual institutes. So today Fraunhofer has some 75 research institutes all over Germany. And as Max Planck is dedicated to fundamental science, to the advancement of fundamental science, Fraunhofer is dedicated to the advancement of applied sciences and applied research. This means they came up with a so-called Fraunhofer model, which meant the only key performance indicator that counts for the Fraunhofer Institute is, do you have industrial contract money? Does industry pay you for your research? Which is a nice kind of key performance indicator, because if industry doesn't pay you, you're obviously not doing applied research of relevance. So the focus is on relevance. And now the additional twist to the Fraunhofer model is that for every euro contract money a Fraunhofer Institute gets, it gets next year around base funding from the government. So if I have a 1 million euro contract with industry today, I know next year I will get 1 million euros from the government. This is something, I also was in the US and tried to run Fraunhofer USA, and this is very un-American. This is giving money without a project, and it's not sunset funding. This is so this is something that is very typical European or German, and it's been very successful. The Fraunhofer Society, or the institutes, today are 30,000 staff, 30,000 of which 2/3 are roughly engineers and scientists. And the annual research budget is 3 billion euros. And I'd say from every 10 years in the last 20 years, so only 2 times, you don't have to do this 2 times, it has doubled. So you can retroactively calculate how large Fraunhofer was 20, 30 years ago. The real success part to Fraunhofer is that it is closely linked. The institutes are all very grassroots linked to their regional economy. So 95% or so of the research contracts that a Fraunhofer Institute has is with the small SMEs, startups of the region. They make up maybe 10% of the budget. And the other 5% are done with the very big, large companies, and they pay the rent. But the actual spin-off and innovative power is in this close collaboration, serving a local and regional environment. Maybe I'll stop here.
Thank you. And let's get into Greece now. And Mr. Emiris, what is your essentially take here?
Okay, thanks for the invitation. And it's maybe a good moment to talk about Athena Research Center and the whole system of research centers in Greece, just after listening to Fraunhofer's. So research centers in continental Europe, I would say Greece certainly, they cater to applied research mostly. So we try to cover the whole spectrum from fundamental to applied to innovation. But truth is that the emphasis is on applied research, because that's how we fund our activities. Right now, Greek state covers about 10% of Athena's budget. One reason is that we grew in the past few years. State budget has been stable. So we have to attract funding, mostly through European projects. So Horizon Europe is right now accounts for about half of our budget. Industrial contracts account for about 5% of our budget. So personally, I think there is a big room for improvement in our business. If we try to do more innovation and more of those industrial projects, it's not easy. We'll talk about the deficiencies of the European and the Greek innovation ecosystem. Just to stick with Athena Research Center is a good example because it's about mid-size, maybe mid to large. But one aspect that differentiates our center is that we focus on ICT. In contrast to other big research centers in Greece, we do not have such a big range of activities. We focus on digital technology, signal processing, machine learning, AI, robotics. These are the main topics that our institutes cover. Out of the institutes, we have a big activity of innovation that I'll come back to it later, just like spin-offs and companies that in different forms. And we also have more specific innovation activities through our incubator, Coralia, that you probably know very well, and has the task of helping companies that do not come from Athena. They come from all over Greece or even Europe with seed funding. Right now, the emphasis of Coralia is on space technology. So I think this is a good introduction, and we'll come back to the innovation aspects.
Thank you very much. And I would go to Mr. Kotrotsios, and given your experience, tell us, how this thing really works in the #1 innovative country of the world.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you very much also for the invitation in this fantastic event. I actually have a slide here, which is not my slide. I just copied, so to be honest, once in my life, which shows a bit this, in high level, this kind of environment in the country, which creates this #1 innovation landscape in Europe. On the right side, on your side, you see much more low TRL between EMPA, material research, which is excellent in terms of material academia, but they're moving slowly, they're in transition, moving towards the industry. Have Polserer Institute. Polserer Institute is the synchrotron, X-ray laser. CERN is a bit cheating because CERN is international, but there's also a part of CERN which is in Switzerland, and which hosts now the Open Quantum Institute, which is very new since this October. The two polytechnic schools at the HETiA, which are among, together with Oxford, Cambridge, among the top universities in the world, number between the top 20s. And then these universities, they bring much more knowledge through disruptive innovation, through typically spin-off startups, and with contact with big organizations, big corporates, while University of Applied Science, Fachhochschule, you say it in German, they are much more evolutive research. They try to improve a bit the capacity of the industry, in particular small and medium enterprise. And up there is my organization which spent a big part of my life, CSEM, Swiss Center for Electronics Microtechnology, which is applied research and innovation. You have CSEM something like the Fraunhofer, and with Swiss colleagues they call it the Swiss Fraunhofer, by the way. It has something like 600 persons, not that big as Fraunhofer, focusing on microelectronics, microsystems, smart digital systems, having something like 200 projects, industrial projects per year. Majority of them bring to new products and process, of course. 65% in Switzerland, the rest worldwide, and this is quite important, this international orientation, and also a lot of European projects, something like 80 European projects per year, a lot with Greek partners. Now, you asked about the international relations, because you see this, what you see here is the national Swiss environment. I'm going to speak about CSM, international environment, beyond projects, industrial projects, and the European projects. There is also the relation with the Heterogeneous Technology Alliance. This alliance created back in 2009 together with Fraunhofer, CLET and VTT, gathering 3 times per year at high level, trying to coordinate, create actions in order to improve our competitiveness. And this continues up to today. It's apparently a very successful experience. Second point, CSM participates also in European Association of RTOs. It's in the board of ERTO, European Association of RTO, which is a kind of policy organization which gathers something like 250 research organizations. And the third international, much more beyond Europe, has been created in the past 2 outfits, one in Brazil and one in United Arab Emirates. And would like perhaps later on to bring some more insights of the errors and the good things we've done with these experiences.
Yeah, and now that we actually had a kind of an intro on what essentially you're doing, I'm gonna start asking, what is the status? What is good? What is great? What is not so good? What needs to be improved if it's not so good? And just to make it more difficult for you, I want 3 key actions that you want to essentially name there. And I'll start with you, Mr.
Me?
Yes.
Putting me on the spot. Let me tell a story, maybe something different to get down to this track. One thing I noticed working in Europe and in Brussels or for something like 10 years or so, was that everybody was talking about the so-called European paradox, that we are so good in education and in science and whatever, and we do not get this into patents or into, no, that's not even true, but we do not get this into products. And so every time I was at some kind of innovation conference in Europe, somebody would pull out an iPhone and say, hey, look, it's made by Apple. And maybe somebody would remind them, well, yeah, but there are 90 patents in there. But European patents, but nobody did. So then when I went to the US for 4 years to manage centers, I was in Washington and I was in the innovation workshop. And all the US speakers, and there were 3 of them, stood up and were explaining, look, we're so good in science and basic research and we have all these papers, but the Europeans are so good in patenting and making these products. And then they'd pull out the iPhone and they'll go say, yeah, but look at the iPhone, but there are 90 European patents or more in the iPhone. And for them, it was the American paradox. And I was kind of like, wait a minute, something's wrong here. and the point, and maybe that is something to consider about why we need collaboration and cooperation even across the Atlantic. The point is, if you think about it more carefully, the valley of death, the deep abyss of the valley of death is different in the United States and in Europe. And in the United States, you can come from academia with an idea, with a test, even an idea for the sensor or prototype. Nobody will give you money for a prototype. You're dead. You have to find your own garage company to start making the prototype. Once you have the prototype, and you can demonstrate it to a venture capitalist, money flows and you fly, and you've gone through the valley of death. You go to Europe, and look at the RTOs, we specialize on making prototypes. we are at the applied, in that valley, at that applied gap. So people can come from the university, or the SMEs can come with their idea, and in collaboration with an RTO can develop the prototype. And now we have the prototype. And now we're dead in the water, because in Europe, nobody believes you can scale this. And you go, and so even if you show them the prototype, they will not pick it up. And this is because something is still left over in Europe about fragmentation, about all these separate borders. And this is why it really makes sense to go via research and via applied research and collaboration to set up a larger ecosystem that doesn't have the friction that we see right now. What holds a venture capitalist back is the scale-up possibilities. And it's much easier to do that in the US or in Asia even.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I don't know if it was 3 points.
Yeah, I think it made the point very well. I would like to go to Dr. Boeck and hear the experience from IMEC that's been doing this kind of work again and again. So, Doctor?
Thank you, and thanks, Patrick, for stealing all the goodies that I wanted to say. So that tells you that we are aligned on some of the things that can improve, but and maybe I'll repeat them. But in any case, what we need to consider as going very well is our educational system, right? So we need to maintain it. We have very high quality training. There's a great initiative also from driven by Europe to connect the leader universities together to make sure that they cluster and share best practices and move forward. So I think that's a very, very good initiative. IMEC stands for inter-university. I mentioned our origin. We do connect quite strongly to the academics. We moonlight as professors. We have PhD students all over the place, and they're a very, very important driver for innovation. And that's also where the international aspect comes in. We have 95 nationalities. It's a blessing. It's a blessing more than one way, not just multicultural, which is always fun, but also the fact different viewpoints, different educational tracks coming together. I think that's great, and it's something, of course, you'll see transatlantic. It's something you'll see much less in Japan, for instance. So I think we have a bit of a wealth in that respect. That's definitely very good. I was going to say, indeed, moving that innovation from, as we often say, lab to fab, is something that Europe is actually quite strong in. We have the Fraunhofers and the other RTOs, and I would count ourselves in that part of the pack. But of course, then building it to the level of TRL 5 or 6 is where you can enthuse the emerging investment and say seed and round A, eventually even. But the point I was going to make is exactly what Patrick said. The unified market is not a unified financial market yet. And I heard it in another conference not too long ago where banks were quoting the innovation power of Europe, and they said exactly the same. And definitely for smaller regions or countries, that limits the growth of startups. So what we see is that what we built with IMEC and international talent and technology is bound to move out quite quickly to the larger unified markets. And I'm again stressing the financial market aspect here. So going to the US in older days, going or getting money from places which are now not so like-minded. But this is currently where I think Europe has something to gain. And sorry to hit the same nail that Patrick hit, but I think it's very important that we realize that Germany can pull its weight, and it does for good reason, but also there still scaling is hard. But countries like Greece, Belgium, and the other not so big ones, they will benefit greatly seeing their startups move forward. And even in Switzerland, you'll see the scaling be part of an issue, and I'll refer to my friend George to say more about that later. But there is something there that is hampering it. But let's build on the strengths. I heard in the previous panel or a fireside chat the fact that you need to specialize in a region. I think that is very important. So I think that's what we can do better. Not specializing and then getting isolated, but specializing and getting connected. And then the final point is, let's make sure we internationally stay connected, to reuse that verb, because I think it's so important for our innovation power that we have the broad view. With a strong Europe being part of that international scene is going to be the only way to survive.
Thank you. Let's go to you, Mr. Emiris, and see what your perspective is here.
Yeah, okay. Let me start with the strong points. I think we all agree that Greece and Europe are very good on human resources. I think that would be my first point if I had to answer your questions. Education, of course, plays a role. Research, basic research was already mentioned. Now, let's go to the weaknesses, and let me say a couple of things specifically for Greece. I feel that one problem right now is instability of the institutional environment. Of course, money is scarce, but this is known, and let's not stick to that. But stability would be easier to achieve, and it's equally important for our spin-offs. Bureaucracy, of course, is closely related. That's one aspect. And the second aspect is opening up, internationalization. That's something that we stress very much at Athena. I think the Greek ecosystem is small. The Greek industry, the Greek market is small. We cannot aspire to have our startups grow up if they just aim at the Greek market. So I can bring the example of Athena right now. Out of the 7 spin-offs that are active, I would say 3 are active beyond the border. So we have one participation in an Italian startup on digital health, actually. Another startup is Greek by Greek law, but has the clients in Germany, which is very important, I feel. And another one is a joint venture with the US, which is very nice, and it's kind of a new thing for us. So that's something that we stress to our young teams, because sometimes people feel ready to go out to the market, but without having the prospect of going beyond Greece or even beyond Europe. So that's something that is important. And one last point, again, in connection to the research centers in general, it was already mentioned that they have an important role in bringing research out of the universities, out of the fundamental research into innovation. I think research centers are also important for providing a safety net. We have, again, an example from Athena that was very successful 3 years ago. We had the biggest exit from the academic sector. HETiA was sold to Samsung. The story of that startup was a roller coaster. It went through the valley of death, maybe more than once. There were points that the teams were asked whether they continue or not. And the fact that there was a research center behind the teams, or that for some people it was guaranteed that they would continue, even if the specific startup failed, was very important. And maybe it was even a determining factor compared to other startups that we had. And they did well, but then they never did this hockey stick expansion.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
And
my turn.
let's go right there, and let's try to also shrink the time, because Alina is
So should we
gonna
fast?
tell us.
Okay. Switzerland, lights and shadows. So start with lights. I think one of the important things of the country, I don't know, the education system is good, but I don't know if this that provides good resources, because Switzerland, beyond being number one in innovation, is also number one in talent attractiveness for the last 10 years. It might be salary, might be good infrastructure, might be political stability, but the fact is here. It's number one. Number two is branding. The Swissness sells in medical devices, many other devices. And branding, why? Because a very strong academic environment creates a lot of science, good papers, products, lighthouse products coming one after the other. And at the end of the day, there's an excellent advertisement of the country through this kind of diplomacy, technology diplomacy. This is the second point. Third point is the manufacturing basis. The country has a very strong manufacturing basis. 20% is a bit more like Germany. In the own canton, which CSEM is located, 44% is production, manufacturing. Just to give some reference, Greece, France is about 10%, a bit less than 10%. And this creates a kind of very, very clever, very balanced system, having SME, startups, large corporation, good innovation system, innovation parks, and on the top of that, an InnoSwiss, which is an innovation agency, which is good. That's the lights, shadows now. The last one becomes the first shadow. Why? Over the last year, the Academy make an analysis, found out that investment in innovation comes more and more to big groups, and the SMEs have much less money give much more less money for investment. That means a destabilization of one of the most important pillars of the environment, of the innovation environment. Number two, a lot of overlap. Switzerland has a lot of money, so it pays a lot, several times the same thing. That's good because it's competition, but that's bad because sometimes the meaning of who does what, who makes evolutive, disruptive innovation is lost. And the third point comes to the point that both you and Patrick made. Actually, there's some money for investment for 1 million, I put it in my notes even figures, 1 million, 2 millions, perhaps 10 millions, 20 millions over above, but the whole between 2 to 10 to 20 millions is really a disaster. It's one of the big problems, and personally recognize not only a Swiss problem, but also a European problem contrary to the American one. I hope it was in time.
All right, so now we're getting to essentially a question I really like. And given we're in Greece and we're talking about the ecosystem here, I would want to ask all of you, what is, especially the people that are abroad, what are your aspirations in working within the Greek ecosystem, if you have a presence here or not? And if you're looking into having a presence here, what are the deciding factors essentially that will essentially convince you to do that? If you have a presence already, of course, what would enhance your, let's say, staying in the Greek ecosystems? Let's start again with you.
With me,
Mr.
I thought so.
You know.
So, now I have to figure out what kind of points I can steal from you up front. No, we do not have a presence in Fraunhofer as far as I am aware of. We certainly have offices or consultants. Now, Fraunhofer has created what they call a Forschungsfabrik Microelectronics Deutschland, which means a research fab, Microelectronics Germany, which is a geographically distributed network of institutes. You could say it's kind of something like the core of a pilot line for microelectronics development, R&D. And they have a manufacturing execution system so they can actually exchange wafers and build something. And to expand on that would be one strategic goal for Fraunhofer, to have a unique network in Europe of strength. So what one would look for is, of course, based on the scientific educational standards in the workforce, present workforce, where are the strengths and the complementarities? And those one would want to combine and define a common win-win situation. Then, of course, it's the question of financing, and there we were very happy that the European Commission has identified microelectronics as an important area, a key enabling area, because we all know the digital and whatever chips are everywhere, and so that has a unifying and a very positive effect on the co-development cross borders and international within Europe.
Thank
so
you.
That's what Fraunhofer would like to do.
And I would go to IMEC, to Dr. Joe Boeck on that
I left
question.
you a lot of points.
Yeah, but I'd like to repeat a few still. Now, maybe just by virtue of my virtual presence, I think a very important element is connection and making virtual corridors between the innovation systems. So I think based on the fact, as I mentioned earlier, that some of these innovations in semiconductor or deep tech in general require facilities with heavy investments, it's not something that you want to place in every city. Having the strengths of such capacity in Europe, plus a connected network that can reach out to those and make sure that the local ecosystems benefit from it, is at the gist of the European Chips Act, Chips for Europe initiative, Pillar 1. So I think there's been a lot of thinking behind it, and there's a lot of prospects for it. We have had great examples for this. There is Europractice, which is an international network, or European network connecting to international manufacturing, allowing, and that's my second point, the designers that don't necessarily need to live in the fab, that they can get access to technologies, emerging or existing. And that is true for academia, for training, very, very important, that they can get their hands on technology at a cost that's allowable for them or okay for them. But also SMEs, as I heard mentioned a few times in this panel, as the driver of a lot of the innovation, but often not the breadth of the knowledge and the know-how within this one single smaller company to access a quite obscure ecosystem sometimes maybe for them. So I think that's where we can do a lot, and the competence centers, for one, could be an instrument that we're looking forward to use in this particular case, and to connect the design platform to emerging technologies, and get crazy ideas from lab to manufacturing, with an intermediate stop in the research fabs or facilities that we're looking for. And I think the final one is, again, and I can't help it, but come back to the startup and incubator ecosystem. We have an incubator of our own and a deep tech fund connected to IMEC these two instruments are very important. You need the money, you need the partners that full-time focus on finding the files which are potentially unicorns or definitely very strong in technology development and build more manufacturing, plus the ones that are incubating the ideas. Some incubator ideas could work a long time with 200K, some need 60 million to be successful. And that spread is very big, and it's not peculiar only for semiconductor, but it's broader. But if we have the incubator system, final point, like Coralia that was mentioned, quite successful in having hundreds of companies connected to the ecosystem and also providing them access to VC and access to market. And connecting that, for instance, to the iStart, and then one maybe in Germany, and then in Switzerland, and for all I care, across Europe, we can have more successful startups coming. So I think there, and again, does IMEC need to be present in Greece to do that? No, by no means. Does it help? Well, if it helps, let's consider it. But I don't think it is the essential ingredient. The essential ingredient is being connected, and I think that's where we need to focus on. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's go to Mr. Emiris and give your perspective in 1.5 minutes now.
1.5, okay. So I'll emphasize the important aspect. I mentioned a few things before. Let's stick to clustering and networking, like it was already mentioned. I would like to refer to a recent effort that is supported by the state on clustering the technology transfer offices of universities and research centers. So Athena participates in what is called Science Agora, along with the National Technical University of Athens, Democritos, the Athens University of Economics and Business, and ICCS, which is a research institute inside NTUA. We feel this is very important, and personally, I would like to see it grow. I would like to see these efforts to be on the national scale, or at least at the regional scale. Right now, it is again fragmented, and I always advise the ministry to support and to encourage funding on the basis of large-scale contacts and network, because this is supposed to be a one-stop shop for Greek industry, but more importantly for non-Greek industry when they want to talk to Greek organizations. And we feel that there is a very big gap there. We make some specific actions, but we would like to support also these horizontal actions among different organizations. So I think that's one important point.
Thank you very much. And let's start with you, Georgios. What is it that you would suggest in having people coming, connecting or working here?
To answer, John, to your question, I bring some personal experience from experience of the outfit in Brazil, in which I was very strongly involved. And from the errors and positive things, actually we created the outfit 2007, and we left from this outfit 2021, with a 60-person operation. The good thing with that is that we had persons from my team being there, working and helping them to do these things, so embedded there. Whether have a CSM in Brazil, it was a good idea. I will join Yo here, Yo the book. No, it was not a good idea, because finally we create a new competitor to the environment, having physical people, locally embedded, but perhaps with existing organizations, could be here, perhaps could be Democritos, Forth, or something like that. Working with these people, to learn with them, might be an excellent idea, I think. This would be the good thing, but not really create an organization in place. I will bring also out of the environment, of the whole environment. Actually, it happened at the beginning of this year, with the support of the Greek embassy in Bern, in Switzerland, the capital of Switzerland, and Elevate Greece. Thank you very much for what they've done very constructively. We try to understand a bit the advantages, disadvantages of the environment. What can we learn from that? And what actually learned is that that would be good to create perhaps teams, either in more high level or perhaps in the field of microelectronics, because there is a microelectronics think tank on how to improve and to learn mutually from good practices, because good practices are also here. And another point, which is the last one, I would like to close on. A dream that I have is that Greece repeats what Switzerland is doing in terms of advertising its technology, of learning from that with this Swiss Next system, and I would be very much happy to see that's happening in my first homeland, Greece.
All right, I'm John Kikidis. I want to thank all our team speakers for giving us their knowledge here. And as a member of BID, member of HETiA BID, I would like to again very much extend our thanks. We have a networking break and coming back in less than 5 minutes now. Thank you very much.